Magneto, master of magnet.
Capcom did not waste any time after the release of Resident Evil 3. They did start sending out surveys to see if people would want another remake. On top of this, around the same time it released, a lot of details have leaked about Resident Evil 8. All this stuff to be taken with a grain of salt. But Resident Evil 8, right now, looks to star Chris Redfield and Ethan from 7. And they're looking to model Chris more like his old self instead of the scrawny dude who was in 7. 8 also is supposed to have a witch that haunts you, PT. And
we don't need that in a Resident Evil game.
And the werewolves are still a thing. And it's also called Resident Evil Village, with VILL being the 8, much like when they announced Resident Evil 7, they took the last 3 of Evil and made it into the Roman numeral 7. So, Capcom keeps saying it's going to be completely different. I think they're still doing first person, but it's either going to they're either going to get sporadic and pull a Resident Evil 6 and get greedy, or it's going to be the greatest Resident Evil of all time.
I have to say that I don't like the idea of spirits or a spiritual side to Resident Evil, because Resident Evil is about science. Resident Evil, no, forget it. Resident Evil is all about the material, the organic, the scientific. Whereas that's where Silent Hill is about the ethereal and the spiritual. And we don't need to include that in Resident Evil. We don't need it to be more like Silent Hill.
I think you put it perfectly. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, and I don't like the idea of werewolves, and I mean werewolves are something that's a spiritual thing, and witches, a witch that follows you, that's okay. To be fair, a witch wouldn't necessarily be
the witch is supposed to be like Marguerite and controls insects.
Okay, see, I guess that wouldn't necessarily be like maybe a bad thing, but I do think like werewolves and things like that. You're just you might be going off the rails just a little bit.
But if it's like if a werewolf is just like a hunter, or if it's just
I'm saying is it a werewolf that's designed as a bioweapon? Because that would be okay. That'd be a little bit different. But do we really need werewolves?
See, I'm going to be honest with you. My draw for Resident Evil has always been the large focus has to be on the zombies, because that's what really got me into the series. The rest of the bioweapons I feel like should be used sparingly, because otherwise they lose their value. Like if I'm playing a zombie game and then there's a shit ton of, let's say, hunters in it, it's like now I'm playing a hunter game, right? Like it doesn't have the same feeling, and it devalues them as horror tropes, because now you see them everywhere. They are less terrifying. You've killed 6 of them. The next one isn't going to scare you. Whereas, like, if you play it, for example, like RE3 Remake, there's like maybe, 5 hunters in the entire game. And that's great, because they're all a challenge. And until you figure out you have to wait and place your shots. If you're like me, first time I saw one, I was just shooting the entire time and they were dodging every bullet. And then I realized, oh, wait, let them get in my face. 1 shotgun blast, maybe 2 more, and then they're out. But that worked really well. But if you have a game where it seems like, and I don't know if this is the case, where the new Resident Evil, the focus is going to be on not zombies, but other things like bioweapons, you might ruin the idea of these bioweapons. They're not going to be scary to anybody, because I just took out a whole game worth of them,
That's completely right. And that's why they say it's going to be completely different. I don't know, but what I'm scared of is if the other thing is, as of today, leaks are coming out that, they initially asked people if they wanted a remake. Well, they waited about a week and there's stuff coming out. And people were hoping, and I think a lot of people voted that it would be Code Veronica, because that could use a modernization.
For sure, yeah.
To the point that it interests me enough that I went out and downloaded Dolphin emulator and, got Code Veronica in 4K and started playing it. But it's come out today that, it's leaked today, that Capcom is indeed remaking Resident Evil 4 for some reason. They come out in 2022. Here's the bigger scope problem, and we've seen this with other companies. since Resident Evil 7, we now have yearly Resident Evil titles. That's not good. That's greed. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier about time constraints. The assets are there, and think of how easy it is for these modders to go in and just change player models on PC for Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Easy to go in. It takes like no time. So they're basically doing the same thing with the code. They'll have to create new assets if they do 4, but half of 2 was basically, or half of Resident Evil 3 was already done.
Yeah.
They just copied over the assets from 2.
And not only that, those assets were also a lot copied from Resident Evil 7, like the user interface for the inventory, the boxes. They're like 3rd generation assets at that point.
So you don't want to, you wait 5-6 years to create a mainline series entry with 7. Takes 15 years to make a remake of 2, but technically 5 for the development cycle.
Yeah.
But here we are now. You can say what you want about 3. Either you love it or you don't like it because it's too short. They bundled in a multiplayer game. And to me, it's a cheap cash-in. We've seen this from Capcom before. So it worries me for the future of what we're going to see if they're going to start going off the rails again. And another thing, to go back to Resident Evil 8, one of the big things about Resident Evil 8 was it was actually going to be Revelations 3, but there was too much production involved, so they went ahead and rolled that to 8. And Revelations was a term back to survival horror for the series when it was in its dark ages, but it's still really not. It's still super action. Mm-hmm. So we really don't know. Time's going to tell on this, but the fact that they're remaking 4 and already announcing that so soon, and 8 seems to be something completely different. I don't know if we don't enter another dark age with the Resident Evil franchise just because it's on top, so they're like, oh shit, let's do all this and maximize our profits.
Well, the dark ages began with 4.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And it seems interesting that they're going to recreate that whole system again, because you're right, they're doing, when I talk to people in my comment section about how Resident Evil 4 may have been a change up for the series, but I don't think it was necessary. I think a lot of people tend to look at RE4 and say like, oh, they had to, or the series would have died. It's like, no, what they had to do was not release a mainline Resident Evil entry every single year, and the series would have been still going today. You just take a Resident Evil game and spend the amount of time you would normally take to create it, and then you don't have to worry about releasing a Resident Evil every year and it getting played out, because you have a Resident Evil game every 2.5, 3 years, and people are fucking hammering for it at that point. And you're absolutely right. They're going down the same road they're going down before. Only people seem to be big fans of it because they're getting what they want out of it now. It's going to take another 6 or 7 years before people start actually criticizing what they're doing right now, because Capcom's giving people what they want, and people aren't going to complain until they get too much of what they want. Then they don't want it anymore.
Well, it's going that way.
Well, hopefully 8 will be like 7. Well, obviously it's going to use the RE engine. As long as it's a sequel to 7, as long as we can get that, as long as we can get a cohesive sequel to 7 that's in first person.
Watch him make 8 co-op.
But
I'd burn everything to the ground.
Well, Jared, at least you have Resident Evil 4 Remake to look forward to breaking down and criticizing just like you did with the original. So you got that.
Yeah. The general consensus with today, just going online, one, people don't want the remake of 4. The other is what it holds up today. What really can be remade besides quality of life?
Yeah, I think it seems more because it's such a recent game that has been remastered so many times, and the mechanics are still
releases.
Yeah, but the mechanics are still in play in Resident Evil, so it's not like they're remaking it to make it more in line with the modern series like they did with RE2 Remake. Look what RE2 Remake was. It was Resident Evil 2 fed through the filter of RE4's gameplay, right? You have over the shoulder, you have melee stuff, it was that, and now people are saying, well, yeah, we needed that for those games that were older and needed to be brought into the modern age, whereas you're still using RE4's gameplay system. What are you going to do to modernize that? Make it more like RE4? Like, that doesn't, I don't think that's going to work as well. I think this is going to be, I think people are going to buy it for sure. The same thing with the FF7 remake. Squaresoft knew they were selling out, with our FF7's remake. I think the criticism is going to be much harsher for an RE4 remake than it even was for an RE3 remake.
Yeah, because there really is no reason to remake 4. There's just genuinely no reason, because what are you going to improve on other than adding the RE engine? That's it. It's the only, you can't. There's nothing to be done with that game. I mean,
but that's why it's a cheap cash in.
It honestly, that's
everything's already there.
It's the only thing it can be. It can only be a cash in. I mean, they've had so much success with 7, 2, and 3. I mean, they're huge sellers. They're just they sell 5 million a piece. No, it's one of the easiest things to just put out a Resident Evil game right now and make money off of it.
That's what they're doing. And when you go back and play RE4, look at the environments. Everything's dark, drabby. There's nothing there's nothing the lighting can actually do, and it's not going to take them very long to make these environments and enemies.
Oh no, no. They're going to remake 4, and it will get shit canned because it won't be like the original Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, and then suddenly people are going to be over here arguing Jared's argument, and I'm going to look like an asshole for pointing it out.
Well, I just hope we get 8 before a 4.
We are getting 8. 8 is slated for January 27th of next year.
They can do it. If they can get 8 out, I mean, I'll because look, we got 7, we got Remake of 2, we got the Remake of 3, and all 3 games are fucking on point. They're great games. Like they're of quality. You're not buying games that are just cheaply made and thrown out there for a cash grab. That's 3 in the last 4 years. I mean,
that's a cash grab.
No, I'm just saying that these games are quality. These games are fun to play. People that love Resident Evil games, like hardcore Resident Evil people, are into them, So they've done something right, but like...
They're just staring back in the direction we've seen this before.
No, but this is and okay, after Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, we got Code Veronica, which was mildly successful because of the system it was put out on. And then after that, you had Resident Evil Remake for the GameCube, which is also that was a bit of an obscure system that it came out on too. So those games, they weren't mainstream at all, to be fair. And then Resident Evil 0, the most forgotten Resident Evil ever made, that came out on the GameCube as well. So you had that short little period between 3 and 4 where the games were. I mean, Code Veronica is a great game. Resident Evil Remake is one of the 7 that I said that are equally of the highest quality of the series, and 0 is pretty mediocre. It's still a really good game. I'm sure that Jared likes it more than 4, to be honest with you, because it's more.
I 100% do. Yeah.
Yeah, and you would be right especially if you're into the fixed camera angles and something that just real quick. Something that I really like about Resident Evil 0 is that there's an area of Resident Evil 2 that's in Resident Evil 0, and it's the was it the Dead Factory? Not the Dead Factory.
Oh yeah, the little
the train car. The train car
area?
area.
The elevators.
Security.
Yeah.
And
that was killer.
Yeah, and what I love about that is because when Resident Evil Remake came out, somebody had given me false information that they were going to remake 2 and 3, but they didn't tell me that they were just putting Resident Evil 2 and 3 out for the GameCube. I actually thought they were going to be remakes just like the original for 2 and 3. Yeah. And so with Resident Evil 0, like, you get to see a little bit of what 2 could have been, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I feel like this. I think Capcom, instead of taking a survey of RE4, because most people are RE4 Ultra fans, you know what I mean? Because most people, I would say, a majority of people who play Resident Evil right now got their start with RE4 when they were in middle school. That's my prediction. I think that's what the fan base is, because people like me and probably like you guys who started out with the survival horror entries, we aren't the majority of people who are buying these games anymore, and I'm totally okay with that. I get that. So if I was going to make a reason-based financial argument to Capcom why they should have maybe continued in remaking the old survival horror titles instead of remaking RE4 is look at the amount of money they made when they released a remaster of RE1 on the PSN and on Steam. It was record-breaking as far as digital sales for Capcom went. And then they released a remaster for RE4, which did okay. That would be my argument to Capcom. Listen, people are so fucking sick and tired of playing different versions of RE4. Give us a remake of one of the older survival horror games. I would even like to see an RE1 remake, even though the RE1 remake is perfect the way it is. I would love to see RE1 in this engine, in this gameplay style, see how it works. I think that would be so fun. That would be amazing. Or at the very least, now that I know RE4 is coming out, that is so much better of an option.
Well, we live in a world where people don't want it, they want to hand it to them. And that makes you think, and it's like when you were a kid, you played the original Resident Evil. Yeah, the controls were wonky, but you wanted to play it. So you adapted. People now are like, we need it as simple as this. We need to play as Cloud Strife and just press buttons over and over so it can be Devil May Cry in the Square Enix universe.